I am doing great, TJ. How are you doing today?
Doing well, thank you. Very happy you're joining us as always here on our weekly chat Thursday mornings. And Senator, let's start with the bill that's been gaining a lot of momentum early on in the session, the hands-free bill. It made it to the House floor and got shot down last session. First of all, where do you stand on this bill? And then second of all, what do you think of its outcomes? Think this one's going to pass this time?
Yeah, so hands-free, there have been a couple different proposals that have been introduced and are moving through the committee process in both the House and Senate. I am optimistic that we will get something done this year and relatively earlier in session. There's some good bipartisan support on this legislation. And from my perspective and the perspective or the feedback that I've heard from constituents so far is that something needs to be done with distracted driving, and we've probably all been guilty of doing this at some point in time, but texting while driving is already illegal, but the statistics and the facts show that more and more accidents are being caused by texting and driving and other distracted driving. So I do think it's important that we get something done, and as I mentioned, there are a couple different proposals that are moving through the committee process. I would love to hear feedback from constituents if they prefer one over the other, or if they have concerns or comments about the distracted driving legislation that they've heard about in the news, or if they want more information, they can certainly reach out to our office, and we're happy to provide that information. But number one, I do think something will get done, and number two, I'm supportive of moving forward with this type of legislation. And I'll mention it later in the broadcast too, but it's really important for me as a state senator to get feedback from the constituents I represent in southeastern Minnesota. And there are a number of ways we try to reach out and get that feedback, and folks are welcome to call my office, 651-296-5649. My email address is sen.jeremy.miller@senate.mn. We have a Facebook page. I have a personal page, but we also have a Senator Jeremy Miller Facebook page. And believe it or not, TJ, the best way to get in touch with me, or folks do most often, is when I'm out and about, whether that's at the grocery store or at a local event or at a restaurant. Feel free to come up to me, and if you have questions or comments on things that we're working on here in the legislature, don't hesitate to ask about those. Getting that feedback from constituents is incredibly important for me as a policymaker, and it's incredibly helpful for me in the decisions that I make here at the Capitol.
Yeah, very good. And, just kind of on that note, I feel like people think, they see you on TV, they hear you on here, and it seems like, you're kind of far off, inaccessible, but that's not the case at all, obviously, as you just proved there. And, and people might get cynical about politics too, but the fact of the matter is, and I'm sure you don't feel uncomfortable speaking for everyone else, you guys listen to your constituents. I mean, that's who you're there to represent.
Yeah, it's a great privilege for me and my colleagues to serve in the Minnesota Senate. It's a privilege that very few Minnesotans ever get the chance to do, and it's truly an honor for me to serve the constituents of southeastern Minnesota that I have the opportunity to serve in Winona, Houston, and Fillmore counties. And in order for me to best serve those constituents and be their voice here at the Capitol, the best way for me to do that is to get feedback from them and vote in a way that best represents the folks. And I'm not going to always agree with constituents, or they're not always going to agree with every vote that I take, but my goal is really to vote in a way that best represents the majority of constituents that I have the great honor and privilege of representing here in the Senate.
We're talking to Minnesota Senate President Jeremy Miller this morning. Senator Miller, I want to ask you about another bill that's been making a lot of news, but probably not as much headway. There's some obvious concerns about it, and that's the recreational marijuana legalization bill. Where do you come down on that piece of legislation?
Yeah, this one, as you mentioned, is starting to gain more traction here in Minnesota and in some other states. The state of Minnesota did pass or did legalize medical marijuana a few years ago, I believe in 2014. For folks that have certain medical conditions, that is legal. As far as legalizing recreational marijuana, what I really like to do, TJ, in addition to getting feedback from the constituents I have the honor of representing, I also like to look at the facts. And Minnesota's in a little bit better position than some other states that were sort of the leaders in passing recreational marijuana, because we have the ability to go and look at facts and statistics from those states, and some of the statistics that I've seen in the states that have legalized recreational marijuana are a little concerning, are actually very concerning. Accidents have gone up. Law enforcement has expressed several concerns about this. I'm worried about workplace safety. So there are a number of concerns that I have with legalizing recreational marijuana. And furthermore, we talked about distracted driving. That's something that we're working on in a bipartisan manner here at the Capitol. Another issue is the opioid epidemic that is sweeping our state and other states throughout the country. So here we're looking at reducing distracted driving by making those laws a little bit more strict. We're looking at addressing the opioid epidemic, which is a drug epidemic, and at the same time, there are some folks that are talking about legalizing recreational marijuana. So to me, it's a little bit counterproductive to talk about legalizing recreational marijuana when we're trying to reduce other drug-related things like the opioid epidemic and distracted driving. So I personally am not there yet, but I'm going to continue to look at the facts and the statistics and listen to feedback from constituents on that issue and all the other issues that we're dealing with here in the legislature.
Minnesota Senate President Jeremy Miller joining us this morning. Senator Miller, I want to ask you about something else. Going on at the Stillwater Prison on January 30th, there's going to be some lawmakers heading there, and it's been sort of an ugly run here for prison guards. 2 have died recently here. Is there any sort of legislation in the works? And I guess, how do you solve this problem?
So there is legislation in the works. There are a number of different proposals. I think it's great that the committee is going to the prison to see that firsthand. I serve on the Capital Investment Committee here in the Senate, or also known as the Bonding Committee. And usually in the fall or winter, the Bonding Committee does tours around the state, and I know the Bonding Committee has toured these prisons as well. I don't think that there's a one answer solution to solve this issue or many other issues that we're dealing with in the legislature. Some of it has to do with funding, and some of it has to do with just a shortage of workers in general, whether it's at the prison or a manufacturing facility or another local business. That's probably the number one issue that I'm hearing about from employers right now is the need for more people. So it's across all sectors, all industry. So there are a combination of multiple things that we can do, and it is something that the legislature is hoping to address and improve this session.
All right, Senator Miller, we thank you for your time this week. Are you prepared now for the Arctic blast hitting St. Paul? There's a lot of hot air up there, and with the session, of course, going on in the Arctic air, what kind of mixture is that going to be?
You know, it's interesting, TJ, because there's a lot of talk about the weather, and I really don't get outside very often from Monday through Thursday. I'm at my apartment, I sleep there, and then I wake up early in the morning, I work out, and then head over here to the Capitol, and then at the end of the day, I try to grab some dinner, and then usually go back to my apartment. So I don't get outside a whole lot until I'm home on the weekends. So we'll see. That's one thing that none of us can control. Sure. is the weather. But again, before we wrap up, comments, feedback from constituents is really helpful. Phone number 651-296-5649. Email address sen.jeremy.miller@senate.mn. Facebook, Senator Jeremy Miller Facebook page. And then out and about in the community, wherever you see me, feel free to come up and say hello or stop down at the scrapyard Friday and Saturdays. I'm there as well.
All right, very good. Thank you for the time this morning, Senator.
Thank you, TJ. Appreciate you having me on, and have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thanks, you too. Yeah, thanks.